Hello, welcome again to Sports Unlocked with Martyn Ziegler from the Times, Tariq Panja from the New York Times, myself, Rob Harris from Sky News, and it turned out the place to be in sports news this week was actually Sharm el-Sheikh.
We weren't there. Tariq, you've been to Sharm el-Sheikh, but your timing was all out.
My timing has been all out, and Mr. Tariq from the hotel, who frequently invites me to have this game of tennis with him, I bet he would run off his feet, poor old Mr. Tariq. Yeah, so what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, guys?
Sheikh Mansour was there. Gianni Infantino was there. Was it a football event?
Yeah, I mean, it was the peace talks, the White House
Photo op.
organised photo op stroke peace summit. This is Donald Trump's big show, wasn't it, in Sharm el-Sheikh there next to the Red Sea? And you're right, it felt very football-y. There was the so let's start with the Sheikh Mansour incident. What happened?
Picture the scene. Donald Trump had just flown in from Israel, quite a few hours late, where he'd been at the Parliament, the Knesset, giving a speech. He arrived into Sharm el-Sheikh. I thought many were expecting it was going to be big hours of diplomacy. In fact, it seemed he spent longer up on a stage in front of a big Peace 2025 sign, posing for pictures and having a bit of a conversation. And this is what he said to Sheikh Mansour there as the Vice President of the United Arab Emirates.
A very rich man.
Yes, also owner of Manchester City, of course. Yes, a lot of cash. A lot of cash this guy's got.
A lot of cash. Unlimited.
Do we think he asked when the verdict's coming? 115, another international break's gone by?
I tell you though, it did make me think though, if this guy can share a stage with the president of the US, he's a representative of this very rich country, he probably has a lot of muscle. We're still waiting for that verdict, and we've all reported on it. And we've talked about kind of the government to government relations. And him there next to Donald Trump is a really good reminder of what that could look like, doesn't it?
Well, I think Manchester City would continue to say it's not a state-owned club. It just happened to be there in a unrelated capacity, as did Gianni Infantino. So there's lots of pieces I've seen in various media saying, what was Gianni Infantino doing at the Peace Summit? So what was he doing?
Well, we'd seen him arrive there, greeted by Egyptian President al-Sisi, and we're wondering just what role would he have? And there he was in a big family photo, as they call it, even at the end of the summit with all the world leaders. And it seemed like he was the only person who wasn't a head of state or wasn't a head of government.
Tariq, I think you made inquiries and wrote something on this.
I did.
So what was he doing there? What did FIFA say?
Well, he was the only, from what I could gather, non-political actor there, fair to say. And remember, Gianni Infantino, not that long ago, said FIFA is not here to solve or cannot solve geopolitical problems. So got to park that. What they said is there were more than 20 world leaders there. So it was only right that he was effectively there. And then the person I spoke to, I said, well, he's not a world leader, is he? And they said, well, there were more than 20 world leaders. So I said to the person, did he see himself in that bracket? So there you go. Gianni Infantino, I guess, sees himself as an equal of those people. What was strange also is the photo op at the end. So the way it worked, Donald Trump was on this raised dais, and behind him were world leaders. Not all of them, though. Not all of them. So Keir Starmer was behind him. Maloney was there, sandwiched between, I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan was between them. But anyway, Donald Trump at one moment said, where is Emmanuel? Where is Emmanuel? About Emmanuel Macron. And he made the point, oh, hang on. He's not here. Emmanuel Macron was sat in the audience with other leaders. So there was some on the raised dais and some sat down. And then Trump made this joke. And he said, wow, oh, wow, Macron, he's low-key today, which is like uncharacteristically low-key for Macron. But then made me think, who wasn't low-key? Gianni Infantino. He was on the raised dais.
And this was the introduction from Donald Trump.
What happened? Where is he? We have Johnny. We're going to the World Cup. I can tell you that. Where's Norway?
They're referencing not the Peace Summit, but the World Cup next year.
So what did FIFA say when you asked them, Tariq, about why he was there?
Well, they pointed me to Gianni's comments on his Instagram account, effectively, saying that he'd been invited by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and that FIFA is going to, according to Gianni Infantino's quotes on his Instagram, build mini pitches, and rebuild sports infrastructure over there in Gaza and have some sort of fun. But I don't understand why he needed to be there.
Several posts on Instagram. He talked about working together with everyone to rebuild football infrastructure in Palestine and bringing football back to the region, thanking Donald Trump again. And there was even a bit of a video set to music he posted afterwards.
A historic day for peace, a new beginning, as President Trump said, and for me as FIFA president for FIFA to be present here in Sharm el-Sheikh, the city of peace, to witness the signature of this peace plan is something that is really important for FIFA to be here to support, to help, to assist, to put ourselves at disposal for whatever we can do to make sure that this peace process comes to fruition and to the best possible end. Well, the role of President Trump has been absolutely fundamental and crucial in this process. Without President Trump, there would be no peace. And now we can really write some new pages of togetherness, of peace in a region which really, really needs it. Football's role has to be to support, has to be to unite, has to be to give hope in the region, in Gaza, in Palestine. We will, of course, help to rebuild all the football facilities. We will help to bring football back together with the Palestinian Football Association in every corner of the country. We will launch a fund to help rebuild football infrastructure in Palestine. And I realized it here today in my conversations with all the leaders in the world. They all want to contribute, and all together we will welcome the world in North America from the 11th of June to the 19th of July for a month of celebration of humanity, of togetherness, which is what the world needs.
Very stylized video.
No surprise to me. If he gets his invitation, from Trump, he's going to go. He was involved. He was invited to the Gulf Summit in May, and actually ignored the FIFA Congress and all these people there, and arrived like 2 days late in order to go. So I'm sure he would have been there like a shot. Whether in a way, I think if he's invited and he goes, why would he turn down that invitation? I think it's more interesting is why he was invited.
It is affirmation of the status of football, the power of FIFA and of Gianni Infantino being in the room, a fast track to getting decisions made, that entry point to so many of the world leaders. Certainly, he'll see it as reinforcing the power of the World Cup and football. Maybe a rival Peace Prize contender for Donald Trump as he seeks that honour next year. And as we've often said, how many other sports would relish to have that invitation? He didn't take the NFL commissioner with him out to the Peace Summit. There is Gianni Infantino on the world stage.
He didn't take the International Olympic Committee president, Kirsty Coventry. Let's not forget, given world stages, that's probably the biggest seat in sport. And the United States is hosting the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028.
And where the Palestine team has its biggest status in sport. It's never qualified for a World Cup. It does compete as Palestine at the Olympics, and many sports facilities beyond football that will be key to rebuilding of Gaza, destroyed during the war over the last 2 years. But no IOC, no Kirsty Coventry. And of course the Paralympics as well, where we'd expect to see many Palestinians competing at the Paralympics in Los Angeles in 2028.
Yeah, absolutely. The other common theme here, maybe linking the two men, I suppose, they clearly seem to like each other. So let's just say that is how Gianni Infantino got to Sharm el-Sheikh from Miami. He flew on a Qatar Airways private jet, an executive jet that he's had use of pretty much for the entire presidency there at FIFA. Why is it linked to Donald Trump? Qatar, of course, have also donated the giant Boeing plane that is going to be retrofitted to be an Air Force One for Donald Trump. So perhaps the two men can also speak about their shared love of Qatari planes.
Indeed. I mean, we're talking about the peace summit, the ceasefire. I mean, I don't particularly feel that Gianni Infantino has done much, if anything at all, towards this sort of peace in the Middle East. That's my personal view.
Wouldn't we call it meddling in politics if he was inserting himself in the talks themselves?
Well, he inserted
maybe,
himself
but
in the talks, didn't he? He was in Sharm el Sheikh, where
The photo op.
where the politicians were. So he's really definitely inserted himself in the midst of that. There were world leaders. I'm sure there were some talks that might have taken place. I asked FIFA. I wonder who did he meet? What did he talk about? We don't have details beyond the photographs of him meeting these various people. But to Ziegs' point, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Given the talk here on this pod a week or two ago, we talked about Lisa Klaveness, the UEFA pressure, etc., and discussions there. We're not sure what Gianni Infantino's role has been in all of this. The Palestinian complaint now, which is not linked to Gaza, is now with FIFA, by the way, is now in its second year without any conclusion. FIFA is the body handling that. That's Gianni Infantino's governing body. So, yeah, I think the point you made, or his role in all of this, deserves a little bit of scrutiny, surely.
What about a few predictions? FIFA organises a peace match between Palestine and Israel at some point. And what about FIFA giving out its own FIFA Best Peace Prize to Donald Trump? But there's a long way to go, really, until there is complete peace.
One thing that the ceasefire has done is the threat we talked about of UEFA suspending Israel has effectively gone away now, at least while the ceasefire holds. But it's not the end of Israeli-related controversy in football, because we've had the Aston Villa being told by the local safety advisory group in Birmingham that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans will not be allowed to go to the Europa League match on November the 6th because of safety concerns. It's seen as a high-risk game.
This had been following calls from the local MP, Ayub Khan in particular. He's an independent MP, saying it wasn't going to be safe for the match. He'd called for it to be called off, or indeed for a ban on Israeli fans. So he's celebrating it as a success of his petition. A decision ultimately taken by the city council in Birmingham. Every match needs a safety licence, effectively, and the safety advisory group has to decide on it. So Aston Villa distancing themselves from the decision. West Midlands Police saying they are the ones who advised the group over safety to not permit Israeli fans over the potential of pro-Palestinian protests on the night. Birmingham City Council called it a collective decision. Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, though, has criticised it after quite a backlash, with the Israeli Foreign Minister calling it a shameful decision. And it led then, 3 hours later, to Keir Starmer himself saying that it was the wrong decision. We will not tolerate anti-Semitism on the streets. He said the role of the police is to ensure all football fans can enjoy the game without fear of violence or intimidation.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the problem, though, because there's obviously a fear of violence and intimidation, and that's why perhaps West Midlands Police took that decision. In Amsterdam, there was last year there was violence, and
even Tim Farron, who's from the Liberal Democrats, saying, we can't have Jews watching football. People might get violent towards them. The Conservative Party as well, criticising the decision as well. In Amsterdam last year, that was when Maccabi Tel Aviv played against Ajax, and we saw Maccabi Tel Aviv fans set on in anti-Semitic attacks. There were various convictions. We also saw video of anti-Arab chants from some of the Israeli fans, and a Palestinian flag at least being torn down as well in Amsterdam. Those scenes in Amsterdam were cited by the police in their statement. An issue seemed to be for Keir Starmer that he spent the earlier part of Thursday meeting activists against anti-Semitism and pledging to do everything to protect the Jewish community 2 weeks after the deadly terror attack on the synagogue. And then this ban comes into place, which is seen as authorities in part of the UK saying they can't protect Israeli people coming to watch a football match.
If you're a safety advisory person, what do you do? I mean, the police, are they going to commit? I guess they'd have to commit hundreds, if not at least hundreds of officers to do that. In a place like Birmingham, where the city council is financially stricken, maybe are people saying, is this a good use of their money? I don't know. I don't know if that's an issue about it. The amount of officers that would be needed.
It's effectively saying there can't be protests without it turning violent.
Well-
But we've seen Israel playing in the last week. You were in Oslo for the game against Norway. Tear gas was deployed outside the stadium. Was that to keep some of the protesters away? Was it
No.
Was that a panicked reaction by the police?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was quite impressed with how calm the whole day was, to be honest with you. The protests had very light policing. In fact, I didn't see a gun or an armed policeman for the entire weekend I was in Oslo. The protest was fairly calm. The policing was fine. The incident that you described there, I think, happened well after the game had already kicked off, and it was like a rump of a few people. I think more than 1,500 people had marched from Oslo to the stadium without any problems related to any violence.
And then Israel played their next World Cup qualifier in Italy, in Udine. And again, there were protests there. Obviously, that was about a day after the ceasefire deal fully came into effect in Gaza, with the hostages being released from Gaza and Palestinian prisoners being released from Israel.
Birmingham is probably the highest risk match of all the Maccabi Tel Aviv's Europa League games, just looking at them. Because if you look at, I mean, I think, Rob, you interviewed the independent MP you mentioned previously, I think, and that sort of strength of feeling within that community probably isn't as strong in any of their other matches.
They did play in Thessaloniki in Greece against POAK the other week. There were demonstrations and protests in the streets. There were banners and marches outside. There was no sort of disorder that I'm aware of there. What had been raised by the local MP to me was what happens to Israeli fans getting in taxis, being out and about in Birmingham, which effectively said that he fears they could be set on in some way, or it could become heated.
I suppose it could become heated, couldn't it? You know, we've lived through the 2 years that everybody's seen. We've seen the Israeli view on this. People have seen images of, Gazans killed in the tens of thousands over the 2 years. It is a very emotive subject. We've seen rubble on TV and all of the language around it. It's almost inevitable that will be emotive. The issue is, can it pass off without violence? And that's what you'd hope.
And we haven't seen in any of 2 years of protests in the UK unrest. Things like police having to go in massively heavy-handed. There have been scuffles, but it's not turned into huge rampages. There have been concerns about things like anti-Semitic slogans and chants through the streets.
Some of the Maccabi Tel Aviv's other games, Lyon in France, Freiburg, Stuttgart, Bologna in Italy. I mean, Italy have been quite vocal about Israel taking part.
Lyon too, Ziggs. I think Lyon away, potential flashpoint there as well. And I think these games in large European capitals are going to have these issues, or European cities.
We've seen it isn't unique for local authorities to impose fan bans rather than UEFA themselves. So Eintracht Frankfurt have been appealing to get a ban overturned on their fans being allowed at the Champions League game in Italy at Napoli in November.
Frankfurt board member Philipp Reschke said, "It's unacceptable that in most places away fans are welcomed as a matter of course despite major challenges, while in others, most recently France and Italy in particular, away supporters are simply excluded by authorities in spite of identical circumstances and risks." He goes on to say, UEFA regulations do not yet provide clubs who are unilaterally affected by official bans on away fans, or even the association itself, with any means of countering or at least offsetting this practice and the resulting atmospheric and competitive disadvantage on the pitch. And that's the point. You have your fans there. They do make a difference. And it's something that UEFA are going to have to look at. The other interesting point in the Eintracht statement on Friday was that since Eintracht fans were first banned from Naples in 2023, there have been 15 further cases of official bans on away supporters in UEFA club competitions.
French authorities banned Ajax supporters from going to Marseille for a Champions League match last month. Then there's the focus on this decision by the Birmingham authorities and raised by the Israeli embassy in London, asking if Paris Saint-Germain would have their fans banned from matches in Britain because there were deaths at the Champions League celebrations last season, and asking if Celtic fans would be banned in future from Aston Villa because there were pro-IRA chants heard in Birmingham before the Champions League match in January of this year, and also discriminatory chanting from Celtic fans in the past. Also, some looking at the situation involving Legia Warsaw. Now, they were allowed to bring fans to the match at Aston Villa in 2023, despite a history of unrest. Then there was violence in Birmingham ahead of that match, which led to Aston Villa imposing a rapid ban on any away fans being allowed in for that Conference League match. But then Legia Warsaw were back playing in England in the Conference League early this year at Stamford Bridge to play Chelsea, and they were allowed fans by the Metropolitan Police. Now the pressure is being put on West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council, with Sir Keir Starmer's government offering extra policing resources so the safety group can reverse their decision to allow all fans into the stadium. But it has become a political row because the UK Football Policing Unit said that they did inform the Home Office a week before the ban that there was a potential for the ban, but we only heard the Home Secretary and Keir Starmer speaking out against it and taking action once it became public from West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council. This has stirred many emotions all round. How often have we heard that fans of a club should not be collectively blamed because of the actions of a minority? Yet some of the commentary online and from politicians branding Maccabi Tel Aviv a violent, racist club.
An interesting point there about collective punishment of a fan base. And yeah, it would be unfair on fans if they are stopped from attending games because of a minority of idiots in the group, and teams have this. What's also interesting, I suppose, is the moment. It's such a difficult time, obviously, in the region.
What would the reaction be if an English club was sweepingly called that by authorities overseas, based on a minority being involved in unrest, some offensive chanting? And some of the commentary is overlooking or downplaying those attacks on the Israeli fans in Amsterdam.
According to data in Israeli media recently, there's been a spike in racism among Israeli fan bases. Most are obviously directed at Arabs in light of what's happened in Gaza. And, you know, according to the study, the highest incidents have been at Maccabi Tel Aviv games. Whether any of this feeds into whatever decision the authorities in the UK made is unclear. They talked about the incidents in Amsterdam, but perhaps there's other intelligence they've used. It would be interesting to know that exactly what factors were used for them to come to that conclusion. As you say now, with the politicians getting involved, that's likely to be reversed or could be reversed.
So much to read about on this decision. From a left-leaning paper, from The Guardian, Barney Ronay did say, as things stand, the British authorities have decided for the first time that overseas sports fans will not be welcome in this country, that it is simply too hard to police, and that this needs to happen in the name of peace and unity.
Yeah, it was an interesting article written there by Barney. And, you know, I read it, and one of the things that I was left feeling is whatever happens now, whether the supporters are allowed to come, whether they're not allowed to come, the kind of politicization of the moment, the noise from politicians and others, it means it's just not going to be an easy night in Birmingham regardless. It's going to be a very volatile evening. You hope it isn't, but given the level of discussion and outrage and noise, it's almost impossible to think that this game will pass off in a way that will make it an easy night, whether there are fans or not fans, given the language used in light of the decision.
We'll see what happens with this decision. The government working to ensure that Israeli fans can be allowed in the stadium. Well, it has been a week of politics interspersed with sport, because when Donald Trump got back from Sharm el-Sheikh to Washington, D.C., he barely had time to breathe, and then he was in the White House threatening World Cup cities over their hosting of matches.
It's amazing, isn't it? Has an American president ever been on the sports pages so much as Donald Trump? Clearly not.
I think you realise is that more than most leaders, sport really plays, doesn't it? You get the extra sports bounce to your pronouncements, don't you?
So he was asked about Boston, wasn't he? The Boston mayor, Michelle Wu, and could they move World Cup games away from Boston or Foxborough, which it's about 30 miles from Boston? And he went, yeah, we can move them.
He really like put Gianni in it there, and also kind of labelled their relationship. Here's a guy who'll do whatever I tell him to do.
This came up because an Argentine journalist was asking about Argentina being at the World Cup, and the Argentine president was there, Javier Milei.
They have several World Cup games. Could those games move to cities that do work?
We could take them away. I love the people of Boston. I know the games are sold out, but your mayor is not good. She's intelligent, but she's radical left, and they're taking over parts of Boston. That's a pretty big statement, right? We could get them back in about 2 seconds. All she has to do is call us. We'll go in and take them back. But she's afraid to, because she thinks it's bad politically. I think she is hurting Boston. If somebody is doing a bad job, and if I feel there's unsafe conditions, I would call Gianni, the head of FIFA, who's phenomenal, and I would say, let's move it to another location. And he would do that. He wouldn't love to do it, but he'd do it. Very easily he'd do it. And this is the right time to do it. If I thought Boston was doing something that was going to cause safety conditions for the World Cup, I could say the same thing for the Olympics, because, we have events that are in different locations for the Olympics. It's based in LA. If I thought LA was not going to be prepared properly, I would move it to another location if I had to. On that one, I'd probably have to get a different kind of a permission, but we would do that.
When these things happen, we're kind of required to then follow up with FIFA and ask them, what does this mean? What does it mean? So then I waited and waited and waited, and eventually got the following statement. Safety and security are the top priorities at all FIFA events worldwide. Safety and security are obviously the government's responsibility, and they decide what is in the best interest for public safety. We hope every one of our 16 host cities will be ready to successfully host and fulfill all necessary requirements. So that statement to me effectively says, look, if Donald Trump wants to move a World Cup host city and he cites security, he can do it.
Yeah, totally. Because I would thought they might say something like, the ultimate decisions rest with FIFA.
Which is what Victor Montagliani told you guys the week before, right?
Yeah,
He is the vice president and CONCACAF president. This is very much a FIFA show, but it was not a bland statement. It was very much Donald Trump has the right to lead on security, which surely be the case in any country hosting a tournament. If in France, the president had said at the time of Euro 2016 that was an issue with a city, or at the Women's World Cup in 2019 that it wasn't safe, that it should be moved, then they'd probably have to act. The question is, obviously, would a sports body have to interpret, is that a political decision, or is it really unsafe in that city?
They have signed very strict host city guideline rules. That's the thing about FIFA. A lot of their contracts are said to be quite onerous and quite detailed, and moving a city is not that easy. But then you've got a president like Donald Trump, who all of the people around him, including Gianni Infantino, are desperate to please at all times. And as Rob says there, what if we haven't, the idea there's mass violence all over the United States in unprecedented ways that we've never encountered before doesn't seem correct. But if this guy keeps saying it, and he is the president, does that become the security issue? Even if your eyes aren't telling you that.
The army were required in London for 2012 to do security.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen, is it? It's just bluster. Few headlines. He doesn't care.
I had another busy week with FIFA this week in trying to communicate with them at least. So this was a very important week of World Cup qualifiers. Teams from all over the world, Africa, Europe, I think South America more or less had completed theirs, had qualified. But the one that struck me, the region that struck me as interesting and a reason to contact FIFA was what happened in Asia. So this was a playoff situation for 6 teams that finished, I think, in 3rd place in their groups. So what somehow happened was these 6 teams were divided into 2 groups of 3. A host country was picked. In one case, Saudi Arabia, and in another case, Qatar, by the Asian Football Confederation. But what's strange is that that's not a neutral venue. Saudi Arabia and Qatar were playing in their own countries for the ultimate prize in football, getting to the World Cup. And they got there.
This isn't media scrutiny or criticism alone. You've got the Iraq manager criticising the format. UAE fans unhappy not only about the location, but the number of tickets they got. Even though there is some logic, given how vast the Asian Confederation is, about putting the final qualifying stage in one location. But it's about how the decision was reached and how it appears.
Somebody summed this up very well. Hugh Davis saying, "You can't say Saudi Arabia haven't earned their place at the World Cup. A bye in the first round, second in a group with Jordan, Tajikistan and Pakistan in the second round, third in a 6-team pool in the third round, and then finally qualifying on goals scored in the 4th round after hosting their only matches."
And getting more rest than all the other teams in their group,
yes,
like
right.
Qatar did. But
all the other teams apart from Qatar, who also had 6 days.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone thinks this has been sort of, angled in their favour to ensure that Saudi Arabia and Qatar had the best chance of qualifying, I mean, I think that's an absolutely disgraceful allegation.
But what was weird? This is the FIFA World Cup, right? So this is Gianni's competition, Infantino's FIFA World Cup. And I was just remembering when he was talking about the Club World Cup, he said this is the most meritocratic competition in football because, it's FIFA decides. This is FIFA making sure sports results are supreme, so level playing fields and all that. So I contacted FIFA. I said, look, what do you think of all this? Surely you, this organisation that prioritises competitive balance, meritocracy above everything else, you'd be furious, appalled by what's happened here. I waited and waited, and I didn't get a reply. I got a link to a 56-page competition guideline handbook. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with that. So maybe when we talk next week, I will have got a comment from someone that is more than, well, the Asian Football Confederation organises it. It's nothing to do with us. You better ask them. Until then, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's Saudi Arabia and Qatar qualifying for the World Cup, guys.
Is there anything in it for the AFC leadership and having anything in it for them?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, actually. So their biggest sponsors have been from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and they've got this event. And also, you raised a really good point. Saudi Arabia pumped billions into the Asian Football Confederation. So what else has happened in that time while this money spigot has been turned on? The Asian Champions League format got changed. So it used to be like the European Champions League, you play these home and away games and there's going to be a final, I guess, somewhere. That then got replaced somehow by, you have the group stages and then the knockouts all take place in one country. Can you guess what country that is, Ziggs?
Is it Egypt? No, that's African, Indonesia.
One more, go on.
I presume this is just like a one-off, one-year thing as well.
What, the competition being in Saudi Arabia, just as a one-off?
Is it just one-off?
I'd like to say it was, but no. I think it's for 5 editions at least.
Well, so that rings a bell. 5 years all in Saudi Arabia. Amazing.
So, yeah, if you want an example of how Qatar and Saudi, in a way, have managed to bend the sport to their will. This World Cup competition is a really good example. And, the United Arab Emirates, not a country that is sort of fearful of spreading the wealth and splashing the cash. They happen to be Qatar's opponent in a kind of, I guess, winner-take-all match that was played in Doha. And their fans were furious, so much so, there was a mini riot during that game. And that's not very common in that region. That shows that the strength they're feeling there. So maybe, if you're the UAE, you might want to spend a bit more money, lads.
Well, if only they had somebody with a lot of cash, lots of cash. It's been another amazing news week, and you've been doing our old friend Josh Wander. What's happened with him, Tariq?
So who is Josh Wander? Let's go back a little bit. Everton sale. That's when people in England and the people who follow the Premier League will be aware of this guy. He was an American investor, co-head of a company called 777 Partners. And Everton, that distress sale under Fayed Mashiri, this guy came very close to buying. In fact, they'd agreed a sale, and then it went through the Premier League's owners and directors test, but also ran the gauntlet of putting your head above the parapet and having the media effectively check who you are. At that time, he also owned Vasco da Gama in Brazil, Genoa in Italy, Hertha Berlin, or at least a lot of Hertha Berlin, a stake in Sevilla, team in Belgium, Perth in Australia. So this was like one of the biggest multi-club ownership groups at the time. And there was a lot of questions about him and his money and kind of the brashness of this guy. I remember reading an interview during the process to buy Everton where he said, he gave the following quote, if I remember right: there is no one as serious about investing in football as Josh Wander. He said effectively, people who talk about themselves in the third person, you do wonder. Anyway, brings us to today. The Everton deal collapsed. 777 collapsed. Lawsuits were filed. And today, or this week, the Department of Justice in America has charged Josh Wander with wire fraud and securities fraud charges. He's accused of defrauding lenders and investors of as much as $500 million, that's $500 million, by making up, fabricating financial documents and making misleading claims. Separate charges from the Securities and Exchange Commission, the financial regulator in America, the SEC. His lawyer denies this. Guys, I want to say I'm really shocked and surprised.
But you are.
All of the reporting has headed this way, hasn't it?
It's not a particular surprise to anybody, any of us. I mean, I remember back in 2023, they were basically, the British Basketball League was put into effective administration because their sort of much vaunted sponsorship and control of the competition collapsed because they just didn't have the money. And yet at the same time, they're trying to buy Everton. And I mean, I remember doing a couple of stories around can this actually be a genuine bid for Everton? Because they had lent them a lot of money. Don't forget that. They had sort of taken money from another part of the business to do it. And people were saying, oh, you're negative. We want to get Mashiri out, and had quite a lot of social media criticism about it. But so yes, I'm feeling a little bit. We were us in the media, and there were lots of people who did write about this, then were perhaps on the right track all the time.
Yeah, it's where fans probably should recognise that scrutiny isn't some agenda against the club. It's legitimate reporting on those who could become owners of the club and the risks that it could be down the line. As we've seen in this case, Josh Wander was the toast of conferences, being hailed at them, gaining a sort of status and credibility through some of the platforms that he was able to go on.
Including, and that's a really good point. I mean, this is also a question for football authorities, where they say, well, no one really looks that closely, like these are the owners and what are we going to do? And the reason I say this is one of the platforms he got, Rob, he got on the board of what was then called the European Club Association, which was, we talked about last week, has been renamed European Football Clubs. But this is the body, for listeners not that familiar with how these things work. It's the top board of the top clubs of European football. He was rubbing shoulders with all of the biggest owners and executives in football. And in fact, by putting him on the board, he's reflecting on them and the industry. Maybe the industry is quite sordid and murky, and this is the sort of character that that probably should be there. I don't know, but that's what the image is here.
Tariq, has his representatives responded to these charges at all?
They have, and I will tell you what his lawyer Jordan Estes said. He said, "This is a business dispute dressed up as a criminal case. We look forward to setting the record straight." And we look forward to him setting the record straight as well. Guys, there's another really curious thing here. So we mentioned all the teams this guy owns. He's part of this American group of businessmen. We've seen them come over in recent years to do multi-club models. And they're all from this. There's three that I'm interested in. We had, obviously, Josh Wander here from Miami. Zeke, someone that you've written about a lot. John Texter, also from Miami and Florida, or based there. And another guy, Paul Conway and Pacific Media Group, another big multi-club ownership group. All of them have issues. So John Texter, he had to get rid of Leon, and we've talked about all his dramas. And then you have Paul Conway, who's facing criminal charges in Belgium, which he denies. So, a lot of questions about this whole model and who comes into football.
Well, maybe coming into English football, I know many fans might welcome or not. Turki Al-Sheikh.
Turki Al-Sheikh, the sort of boxing supremo. Is he Saudi sports minister or was or something?
He's a Saudi head of entertainment is what his title is. He's the head of the General Entertainment Authority. He got a name check last week, and he's getting one again. The final word again to Turki Al-Sheikh. So he has denied that he was ever in talks to buy Bristol City, but the chief executive, I think, has come out on the record say, "Oh yeah, we met this guy. He came here." So after setting the hairs racing with the Manchester United claim that wasn't true last week, he's denied something that is true, which was apparently he was interested in buying Bristol City. Bristol City fans, if you think that would have been a good idea, please contact us. How do people contact us, Rob?
sportunlockpod@gmail.com and Sport Unlocked on all the social platforms. And the Bristol City CEO said it's no secret that we're looking for investment, whether that's minority or majority. So maybe just contact us. We can filter the request.
There you go.
Excellent. Nice one.
And thank you everyone for listening. Goodbye for now.